So why aren't people having kids anymore? What are they saying is the reason, and can we dispel some of those myths? Hi, I'm Adam, and this is perhaps one of the most important topics facing our country today that people are really not talking about enough. You hear about politicians debating wars, Social Security, the national debt, racial and LGBT discrimination, all these other issues, but really, how often do you hear about the reproductive crisis? France, Italy, the UK, Australia, Japan, and many others, even first world nations that are simply not making their replacement rate. It's supposed to be 2.1 babies per every reproductive female, and simply this is not a rate in which we're achieving. Obviously, you also need males to reproduce. The replacement rate is calculated by childbearing women. These first world countries are lagging far behind what we need to be able to replace the population. The only reason that the US is doing slightly better in this regard is because we have net positive immigration to our nation, which is a whole nother can of worms that I won't open right now. Obviously, there's lots of policies being debated right now about immigration, but that's for a completely different video. But putting all that aside, the point is we are not having enough babies to replace the population that we have today. And here I'm going to go through an article and talk about maybe some of the reasons that people are giving for not having babies. I'll link this article and lots of other sources down in the description below so you can fact check all my sources, but we'll put the reasons that people aren't having babies into two main buckets.
So in the practical bucket, we're talking about things like your career, your lifestyle, not wanting to, spend too much on a new category like childcare and things like that. The timing doesn't work out. That's a huge one. And if you're waiting for the perfect time to have kids, you're going to be waiting for a very long time, because I'm here to tell you, there's never a perfect time. It's never convenient to have a pregnant wife, and then to have a pregnant sick wife, and then to have a newborn, and then to have a newborn who doesn't sleep, and then to have a toddler, and then to have a toddler who thinks that you can do your business on the living room rug instead of going in the toilet.
I know that times are a little different now, and we live in a society where a lot of both spouses have to work, and there is also been a rise of the girl boss, where it's encouraged for women to, rise up in their field, in their workplace, and in their careers, and spend more time at work than traditionally at home. And we can debate in the comments whether or not this is good or bad for family, for women, but these are realities that are occurring. And now the second bucket is what we'll call an ideological bucket. And this could be, your own apathy or even disgust with the idea of raising children or bringing children into the world, a traumatic past in your family or in your partner's family, and whatever it might be. The reason that you don't want to have kids is not necessarily physical, but it's more emotional or psychological. Some people cite not wanting to bring children into this messed up world that we have inherited from our parents. And others will even quote, there's environmental concerns with raising children and increasing the population, which I'm gonna put that one to bed right now. First, haven't there always been humans? We are naturally occurring, just like trees, just like rocks and water. Second, I believe the fear comes from something like we treat our planet poorly because we're not good stewards of the land. There's a chance that all humans will die out. Well, there's an 100% chance that the human race will die out if we don't have kids. And third, if you want to fix something, having no children is never the answer to that, because then you can't be the solution. You can't raise the child that might be the solution. Who knows, maybe you could raise the next climate evangelist. Now, I do want to highlight there are also individuals who cannot have children, that have the inability to get pregnant. But that's not really what we're focusing on today, because we're talking about the reasons people choose not to. So that's why we're talking more about those practical and ideological reasons. I know I can't change anyone's actual view on family life on just a YouTube video. This is something that requires much more time and personal attention than I can give you. I'm just trying to get you to maybe reconsider the actual reasoning behind the choice to or to not have children. Obviously, I am biased towards having children. I'm 3.5 years into being a father right now, and I can't tell you enough how rewarding it can be. It's tough work, don't get me wrong, but it is so much fun at other times. And now, a lot of people probably cite a combination of both practical and ideological reasons not to have a child, and there's a good transition point now. We can start to bring to light some of the actual physical numbers and some of the things that people are facing in the world today in this practical bucket, and maybe some of this will help soften other people's mind on some of the ideological side of things as well. Now we can start with the macroeconomic situation when we look at the broader trends that are occurring right now. And you'll see that people are saying here in 2025, as this is being recorded, that it's actually harder to get a job now than it was before. It's harder to get a promotion, that artificial intelligence is taking away some of those entry-level jobs. The type of person who's being affected most is in that age bracket where they would be having children. According to Fortune, there's actually a study showing that young college graduate men are being employed at the same rates as non-college educated men. But the difference is that they also have the burden of debt tacked onto their back. CNBC says in 2024, over 1/3 of the workforce had a side hustle, and side hustles are more prevalent among the younger generations than any other generation, especially Gen Z and millennials, the childbearing years. I really don't want to beat a dead horse on the student debt crisis or on housing affordability and the fact that young people are renting longer and not able to save up a down payment for a house. I think a lot of these things have been cited in a lot of different studies and a lot of different news sources, but these are all things that young people like myself in my age range are faced with. But it's important to remember that the economy has always, throughout time that we've been tracking it, been cyclical. The job market grows and it shrinks. The stock market rises and it falls. There will always be opportunity on either end.
And now there's a quick Axios report that I could pull up here that shows that maybe Gen Z has just way too high of expectations. I mean, expecting $587,000 a year as a salary. Full transparency, my first entry-level job out of a 4-year bachelor's program, I made less than 1/10 of this.
And I get it. If you can't find a job, oftentimes you find yourself going back to school for deeper debt. That's what we're told to do, right? We're going to make ourselves more competitive and push back finding a job. But I'm here to tell you that there are other options as well. You can take a non-traditional path, like even a year of missionary work or 2. You can do something like a trade where you don't require a specific degree, or you can even start your own business and try to create your own path in an entrepreneurial way. Now here's a hot take. I don't think you need to do as well as your parents. A lot of us are not going to do as well as our parents did, and that's okay. We need to let down our pride a little bit, and maybe we're not going to go on a family vacation every year like we did when we were growing up. Maybe we're going to make different financial choices. There's nothing wrong with that.
I know it's culturally weird in America, but there is this thing called intergenerational living, and it works in a lot of cultures in a lot of countries. And maybe America, we need to wake up and decide that it's okay to live with your parents a little bit longer, or to have your mom or your dad come and stay with you when you have a kid for extra help.
Yes, housing is more unaffordable. The data will show you that. You don't have to look far to find it is harder to buy a house, to put a down payment on a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom family house in the suburbs than it was 50 years ago. That's just how it is now. There's nothing wrong with renting and having a kid. I know lots of people who had their first child in an apartment. You can even have a second child in an apartment or a townhouse. There's a stigma with that we have to, as a society, kind of just let go. But my wages have stagnated. I haven't made a promotion. I can't keep up with inflation. You can cut back on things here and there. You don't need to go out for meals as often as you do, or you don't need to spend a lot of money going on trips or weekends away, or you can cut back on certain luxuries here and there. There's ways. It's not going to be fun. It'll be penitential, and you can offer up those things that you maybe wanted to have that cocktail at dinner. That's okay. You can make these things happen in your everyday life just with a little bit of humility and a little bit of grace. Now with the economy, it's easy to paint a very bleak picture. But if the people before you didn't decide to have children, there's a chance you might not be here to help solve these problems that are facing us today.
Part of me wants to point fingers and blame someone other than myself and say, the world handed my generation a steaming pile of you-know-what. But truly, this is looking at the world with a victim mentality, when I want to look at the world as a problem solver. I know it's cheesy, but they say you have to be the change that you want to see in the world. Now we can actually look at some of those numbers, and this is not to scare you. This is a practical exercise for somebody whose brain maybe works like mine, a very logical brain, somebody who needs to have the numbers in front of them to really understand and grasp what they're getting into. All right, let's hop into some of these numbers here, if you will. This is from, a lot of these numbers are from the Plutus organization, and you can see in the description below, I have the links to a lot of these sources and things like that. So I want to say, first off, on the average cost column here, this is over the course of all 18 years, and this is annualized numbers. So average cost for childbirth, it says with insurance is about $4,500. Now, different plans might have different perks, and prenatal visits might even be included in things. At least in certain plans like ours, we paid nothing for prenatal visits. So it depends on what you're paying for premiums, what you're paying for, for health insurance in general. But you can probably expect a few $1,000s up front just to have the child. Of course, there's also costs if you have a C-section. Surgery can be expensive as well, recovery, drugs, that kind of thing. Also, it's worth noting, if you want to adopt, that is going to be a lot more expensive. They say on average it's about $43,000. And if you have a surrogate pregnancy, it's going to be on average $75,000 to do so. These are just things to note. Child care and education, again, very nuanced. It's going to be difficult to nail down a exact number based on where you live, how these costs change over time, but they said on average $37,376 over the course of 18 years. And I think that includes both public and private school children. Averaging out these numbers, I think on the low end, you could expect something more like 3/4 of that, around $28,000. And now we move into annual expenses. These are expenses that come straight from this Plutus organization website. Housing costs, this is going to be, the cost towards having a bigger home or a bigger apartment. It said about $314 a month that obviously parents would pay to have that larger space to accommodate the child. I think you could, especially if you weren't going to expect every child has their own room, every child has to, have their own bathroom, sink, all these types of things, you could get down to about half of that extra cost per month, which I calculated to be about $1,800 a month as well. On the low end, those numbers, you can look over here what that looks like over the course of 18 years. Now for food costs, they actually did this for me. They have a thrifty plan and a what's called a moderate plan in the USDA. The thrifty plan was about $162 a month per child, and the moderate plan was about $233 a month per child. So that's multiplied by 12, and that's multiplied by 18 there. So that's about, over the course of the child's life, anywhere from $35,000 to $50,000 spending on food per child. So that, again, children got to eat. Transportation, you're going to be paying for a bigger car, for gas, car insurance, maintenance, car seats, right? On the low end, they said, on the average, it was about $1,900. On the low end, I think, you don't have to get that luxury model car or whatever, and averages also do account for things like that. You could get away with probably closer to $1,400 in transportation per year, and then obviously over the course of the 18, you're looking from anywhere from $26,000 to $35,000 on cars and transportation to get those kids around. Healthcare, they said about 9% of spending. I think that's annually. It greatly will fluctuate based on how healthy your child is. So that's anywhere from $870-ish a year to $1,100, $1,200 a year. Again, if your child's healthy and doesn't have a lot of doctor visits, doesn't need glasses, doesn't need dental work, then they probably will get by with a lot less than that. This is probably going to be taking the average, which includes really, really expensive conditions that your child, say your child has some very rare blood disorder or something like that. It's going to skew the results extremely far towards the upper end of the monetary spectrum there. So on average, they're saying you're going to be spending anywhere from $15,000 to $21,000 on children's medical expenses. Hopefully you don't have too many emergency room visits because you're telling your kid don't play football or don't ride a skateboard, things like that. Clothing, you're going to be looking at about 6% of your spending. I really recommend with clothing, buy things secondhand, go to the thrift store, find a older cousin who just had kids 5-10 years ago, get their stuff from the basement. It works perfectly well. The kids grow out of the stuff so quick anyways. They say on average per year you're going to be spending anywhere in the neighborhood of $700 to $800 per year per kid. I don't spend that much. Full transparency, my kids wear hand-me-downs. I think this number could be even far lower than 500 something on the low end. I would say you could push that down far below 500 to you could spend $200-$300 on your kids per year and probably get away with it, and they still wouldn't look like complete slobs. This is parent discretion. You're gonna husbands, you're gonna be fighting with wives over what's nice enough for the kids to wear out of the house. But that's between you and your wife. So that's anywhere from $10,000 to $14,000 over the course of the child's life. I think this category you could get down a lot. Again, have those conversations in your own households. Finally, miscellaneous goods. This includes like entertainment, sports, media, that kind of stuff. Again, it varies dramatically based on your own lifestyle preference and your own values. But on average, they say that kids cost about $900 a year. It depends how nice of a Christmas your parents like to do, birthdays, that kind of thing. But yeah, anywhere from $600 to $900 per year. So that's going to be anywhere from $12,000 to $16,000 over the course of your childhood until you're 18, and maybe even after that, they'll still buy you Christmas gifts and stuff. So that's kind of nice. But anyways, if you look at these numbers, on the low end, and I think these numbers are even pretty conservative, you could definitely make the case that some of those low-end numbers were even high. You're looking at $162,000 to raise a child, at least in 2025. Anywhere up on the average end, right about where those numbers that the experts throw out, right around that $246,000 to $250,000 range. And that's how this organization derived the numbers. They seem to have a pretty decent methodology. This is average numbers, and it's going to change dramatically based on where you live and the kind of things that you value.
And even after all of this analysis, you're still going to say, well, it's still not convenient for me right now.
It kind of goes without saying that once you decide to have kids, you really learn that your life is not your own, and you're going to be putting their agenda and other things ahead of your own. And this is honestly when you find true joy in life and what it means to actually put others first. And it's really just hard to explain until you have a child of your own, because no wonder compares to the wonder of your own child.
And I think another small issue that maybe we as a society have taken with the idea of having kids is looking at some economist somewhere who spits out a number like it's $250,000 to have a child. And we just take that as the de facto truth. We say that, okay, yep, I'm going to need $250,000. Well, it's not one all at once. You don't need $250,000 to start, and you also don't necessarily need that. So as you can see, we need to have children to maintain replacement rate in society and to keep this beautiful human race going. Besides the economic incentives of having a larger population and having a larger consumer base and more people paying into Social Security and all these other reasons, it's just beneficial for society to be raising wonderful, beautiful, bright-minded children. I tried to make this video agnostic of any specific faith tradition, but whether you're getting married in the Catholic Church or not, whether you have been married in the Catholic Church or not, I think it's important to know that for my Catholics out there, you're taking a vow to be open to life, to be open to children. And you did this in front of a lot of witnesses. And you're saying, I will be open to life and I will raise children in the faith. And what you're doing is you're giving the Lord more souls to worship him, more servants to do his work in the world.
If you bring more children into the world, more souls for Jesus to love back as well.
Remember, Jesus says, let the children come to me. So what we got to do, we got to give him children to let them come to him. I really want to do more of these longer form, more in-depth videos. And if you have suggestions for me, please leave that in the comments below. And also, I want to shout out to our cousin who has started a new website called Still and Know. She is a graphic designer who does a wonderful job with art, Christian art, and you can see on her website she has a lot of cool designs that are supposed to start a conversation. So if you don't mind, go over to Still and Know and just check out the website, tell it to a friend, maybe for a Christmas gift coming up or whatever. It'd be really cool to support her and maybe get some more traffic to her website as she's starting out. So thank you very much from us to you through Mary.